Hello, 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 everyone. Just going to wait a second to just check all of my settings are correct. Hey guys, how's it going? Please let me know in the comments if you can hear me loud and clear. How is everyone? Good to see so many of you here. This has been a long time coming. Yeah, can everybody hear me okay? Fantastic. So we all know why we're here. I will just start off by saying I appreciate you all being here and commenting and that, but can we please keep the comments respectful? We may all have different views, different opinions about me, about Lou, but if we can just remember that we all want the same thing at the end of the day. So just try and be respectful. And so I think let's bring in the man himself. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Vinnie. It's certainly good to be here, and I really appreciate not only your patience, but also that of your audience. Really, really glad to be here.
Hey, it's my pleasure. You know, we all have things going on in our lives, and that can't be helped sometimes. I'm just glad that we were able to rearrange, and you're here now for everyone. So thank you.
My pleasure.
So, without further ado, I'm going to jump straight into something that's right up to date. So obviously we couldn't do our discussion last week because you were in DC on business. Mm-hmm. And after listening to your chat with Mr. Jimmy Church, you laid out that you had met with the Inspector General. And so I just wondered if you were able to give us an update on what's been said, because I know you had quite a long meeting with them. So if you're able to talk about that, I think a lot of people are quite intrigued by it.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, let me explain to your audience, who some folks may not be aware, what the role of the Inspector General is for the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. Think of it from the days of watching these old cop shows and police shows, internal affairs. Okay, so what the IG is responsible for is identifying any type of internal issues to the department, in this case, Department of Defense, and then making recommendations and solutions for the secretary to remedy those issues or those complications and problems. So they are an independent body. They don't fall under anybody other than the Secretary of Defense himself or herself, whoever's in charge. Right. And they are supposed to be unbiased and fair, and ultimately looking out for the best interests of the department. In this particular case, the individual who had a pleasure of speaking with this time was a gentleman named Harvey Stone. Harvey Stone is the originator, if you will, of the DoD Inspector General evaluation. A couple weeks ago, the DoD made an announcement that they're doing this evaluation to see how the Pentagon has, over the last several years, been handling this topic. They are not trying to necessarily get anybody in trouble. They're not trying to play gotcha. They simply want to find what is broken and then provide solutions and recommendations to fix whatever has been identified as being broken. I'm out of respect for the DoD IG and to allow them to do their work, I'm not going to go into a lot of details, sure, other than the fact that they seem very interested in trying to find where those challenges exist and then identify remedies to those challenges. And my part in this is to help them understand the landscape, understand maybe perhaps a little bit of the history behind this effort with UAPs and as it relates to ATIP and the Pentagon, and then let them make a determination how best to fix it. Obviously, there's been some significant issues involving not just the program itself, ATIP, from a from a public relations perspective, but also my role in it. And it ultimately took a letter from apologies, I haven't had enough coffee, from former Senator Harry Reid, who was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, and his program, one of the original sponsors. It took finally a letter from him to establish the facts of what ATIP was and what my role is and what we were doing. So I think the Department of Defense recognizes that there's been some perhaps some missteps. We'll just say
Yeah.
that, and whether they were deliberate or a consequence of perhaps some sort of dysfunction is going to be has remains to be known. But that's their intent within the IG, to figure that out, and then hopefully be able to provide recommendations moving forward, so we can have a collective conversation about this while ensuring transparency with the American people.
Wonderful. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thanks for clarifying that. And this case that you're involved in, this evaluation, the one related to your missing emails. Now, is that an investigation, or, I mean, because we know that there's an evaluation about looking into the DOD and the Pentagon's, how they're looking at it.
Sure.
This is separate, isn't it?
Well, so there is another issue that we're dealing with right now, and that is the allegations that all my emails have been deleted. And here's why that's problematic, because the stated purpose that they deleted, the predicate for deleting my emails was the fact that they were, quote unquote, historically not relevant. Now, if you look at the time what I was dealing with, I had two fundamental portfolios. And the first one was one involving the 9/11 trials at Guantanamo Bay. So the individuals who were allegedly responsible for the 9/11 terrorist attacks in our country. And then the other portfolio was the ATIP portfolio, which I was also running. On one hand, you have what is heralded to be the trial of the century coming up. And then the other one is perhaps the most profound question we faced in our lifetime, and whether or not we are alone, and what was the Pentagon's role in that. Right. I find it very hard to believe that neither one of those topics was ever deemed historically relevant. That just doesn't make sense.
No.
And so, right. And if so, those emails were supposed to be kept into perpetuity, which means they're kept forever and eventually go to the National Archives. And so we have really two possibilities. Either A, my emails were deleted, which we've got a significant problem on our hands, because it's either complete incompetence or it was deliberate as part of a cover-up. Okay.
Yeah.
And neither one of those are really good. Or the other option is that they didn't delete my emails, and that either they were misinformed, which doesn't look good for the Pentagon, or once again, that someone is deliberately playing games here and trying to obfuscate, which again doesn't look good. So
no,
it's very sad for me, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to help the Pentagon. I'm trying to help the Department of Defense get out of this situation. They've backed themselves into a corner for a lot of years. Yeah, I'm not trying to make them look foolish, but I can't excuse outright lying to the American people. You can't tell the American people the untruth. You don't have to tell them everything. There's times you can say, "Hey, no statement, no comment. I can't confirm or deny." But you can't lie to the American people.
No.
There's only very specific circumstances in which our government is allowed to do that. And I'm not going to go into what those exceptions are right now. Yeah. But they're legal exceptions that are legally defined by the letter of the law. And this is not one of those cases. So, what exactly is going on here? And why is it important to now delete my records? On a conversation involving UAPs, right? Unless you're trying to hide something.
Yeah, and was it just emails, or were there files as well that may have contained classified information?
It was all the files. It was the shared folder that had all of the. So this is why I really have a hard time believing they deleted anything, because there's no way you're going to say that the entire Pentagon's UFO files are not historically relevant, right? I mean, guys, come on. I might have been born at night, but not last night, right? Yeah. So, that's why I think this story is still evolving, and I don't think anybody buys the fact that they've deleted my emails. There's no way in hell, unless they really, 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 really are trying hard to cover their asses.
Absolutely. I mean, emails are one thing, but files as well that pertain to such important information.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of talk recently about speculating how long the emails should have been around until they get deleted, and people were saying up until 2024, and other days.
At a minimum, it's 5 years.
Right.
But when you go through the trail of emails, you realize that it wasn't like they just did it yesterday, which would have been like 3.5 year mark. Apparently they deleted my files like a year ago, possibly a year and a half ago. So, and then of course there's other categories of information that the work I did is supposed to be kept forever. It never gets destroyed.
Yeah, that makes more sense to me when you actually think about it. So, well, listen, thank you so much for clarifying that. So moving on, we know that also this past week that officials from the Navy and the FBI gave a classified briefing to members of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Counterterrorism, etc. So there's a lot of people that really are skeptical about these things. Are they getting the right information, the right number of cases talked about? So, I mean, these 120 cases, is it something, are they getting the best cases? Are they getting given the right data, or is it just something to delay this issue coming out? What can you say about that?
I think it was probably more like 170 cases, but I might be
right,
wrong.
okay.
But they only started from the Nimitz incident and moved forward. They didn't really look at the complete history of the U.S. involvement with this topic.
Right.
I think it was the effort was an honest attempt to try to begin the conversation. What we do know is that the information provided by the Director of National Intelligence and the Secretary of Defense have now stated for the record and emphatically that this is not our technology. So that's a big deal, right? That is a huge admission, because that only leaves two possibilities. It's either foreign adversarial technology, or it's not, meaning it's something else. It's a completely different paradigm. And so on one hand, the government either has to admit this is the greatest intelligence failure that we have ever faced in our country, eclipsing 9/11 by an order of magnitude, because somehow some country over 70 years has managed to technologically leapfrog ahead of us using this technology, and we have no idea, or that this is something else. Again, that this is a much bigger question about our species and humanity, and that's where we're at. That's where the conversation is right now. I do think that Congress will hopefully see this and realize that we have to get ahead of this. We have to figure what's going on. I think Congress will have the wisdom to establish a more long-term enduring capability that's not just going to be a task force, which is usually set up to solve a temporary problem. And it's something that's going to hopefully include the whole of government approach, including FAA and Department of Homeland Security and Department of Energy and NOAA and perhaps National Science Foundation, get the best and brightest academics and scientists, academics all involved.
That's what we need. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think we're good. But if I may, Vinnie, I'd like to share something with you. I haven't really discussed this with anybody. But here's probably the biggest challenge we have right now is not necessarily figuring out what's up there in our skies. I think the biggest challenge we have right now is with ourselves, and that is, what does disclosure mean? And people, everybody you ask is going to have a different definition, but specifically, first of all, what is disclosure? Who's going to determine when we've reached disclosure, right? Okay, now we have disclosure. I mean, and then also who decides, where we go from here? Ultimately, it may be by consensus, I don't know, but who is going to be the one to say we have now reached the moment of disclosure? Because some would argue we've just had it. It's already happened. And some have said, well, we haven't had it yet unless we have something landing in the White House lawn. We first need to decide that as a people. What does disclosure mean, and how do we know once we get there, right?
Sure.
And then we need to make sure that whoever we empower to make the recommendation and determination on where do we go from here. I'm always very careful to allow people in our governmental institutions to make that decision on our behalf, unless they have, if you will, the consensus of the people behind them.
Of course.
I think I trust an elected official to have this conversation probably more than a government bureaucrat, only because in theory they represent the will of their constituents. One would hope that that's what they're doing.
Yes, of course.
But these are questions we have to ask ourselves, and then maybe the big question is: do we decide as a society that we're not going to let anybody make that determination for us? We're going to make that determination, right? We're going to decide when we've reached disclosure, and we're going to make the determination and where we go from here. And then government will execute that as will of the people, not the other way around. And I think that's we need to know internally and externally, what does victory look like? How do you know you've reached the next goalpost, if you will, or the next waypoint?
Yeah.
Because it's important when you're navigating on a map. If you want to know where you're going, you have to first of all know where you've been to know where you even are right now. And then once you know where you are, then you can decide, right? Because otherwise you can find yourself way off course.
Yeah.
And this is a conversation we haven't had yet with ourselves. And it's something that we desperately need to do, and we need to do it soon, like now.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me.
No, absolutely. And it's like something that you've said before about disclosure being a process. And I feel that we have just started the journey. And we may not know where the journey is going to end or how long it's going to take to get there. But I think it's a positive thing that we have started the journey. And it looks like we have started it together, and we are all in it as one. And I think it's a big step. It's something that's we wanted to happen from a long time ago. So I see it personally as a positive thing.
By the way, Vinnie, before I forget, if I may here, I do want to do one quick shout out to somebody. I received a tweet from somebody. I won't say who because they wanted anonymity, but apparently their daughter has just joined the British intelligence community.
Oh, wow.
And is fairly excited about it. And I just wanted to offer a very warm, heartfelt congratulations. It is a profound honor when you are selected to serve your country in that type of capacity. And I just wanted to do a very quick shout out. If she happens to be listening to this podcast, I just want to say congratulations. Very well done. And, who knows, maybe we'll meet up sometime in the field.
You never know. And actually, I did see that tweet. So, no, that's great. Yeah. So if you're watching, there you go. So, Lou, just carrying on from what we were just saying about the briefing that was just happened last week. We did hear a few statements from some of the representatives afterwards. But the one that really stood out was, I think it was Peter Welch, who sort of said, "I'm not on the edge of my seat." Now, that doesn't say a lot for us, the public, who are sat here, desperate to get information on what might be coming through this June 25th report. I mean, what do you think about that statement, that it's kind of downplaying it a little bit?
Well, I think it's honest. I think what he's saying is, look, we don't have enough information right now to establish what this is. I'm not on the edge of my seat because I don't have enough information to provide any type of recommended outcome of what this is. We have more questions than answers at this point. Someone else had indicated that they think we should have at some point congressional hearings on this, and I applaud that. I think that's absolutely what we need. Hey, man, let's. You want to be transparent? Put your money where your mouth is. Let's do this. I'm certainly game for that. If the government gives me an ability to have a conversation about things I've been privy to, hey, and I don't got to worry about violating my NDA. I'll do it now. Let's go.
A weight off your shoulders, maybe.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Let's just talk about something that I've been seeing a lot recently through my Instagram account and stuff like that, is the use of the word threat. Every single day, people assume that as soon as that word's mentioned, that we're talking about these, whatever they are, beings, objects, that they're here with hostile intents. It seems like people are jumping from 0 to 100 without actually thinking about everything in between. Right. We're not saying threat in a hostile way. Could you just talk about that and talk on that and how we need to be careful?
Yeah, Vinnie, that's great point. Great point. We're looking at this to determine whether or not this is a potential threat. And when you say threat in government speak, it's a very simple calculus. You have capabilities versus intent. Now, we've seen some of the capabilities. We have no idea the intent, so we don't know if this is a threat. Okay. And second of all, there's a fundamental difference between a potential threat and hostile intent. And that's a fact. So I've often said, if I go to the airport and I jump on a 737 to fly to, let's say, Colorado, there's no threat there. But if I were to, let's say, now be on the runway when one of these things is passing by and I happen to get behind the jet engine at the wrong time, there's a biological threat there. There's an environmental threat. I'm going to probably go deaf. I'm going to lose my hearing. I'm probably going to get burned and blown all over the place, maybe break a few bones. So, it's not that the engine is necessarily trying to be a threat to me. It's not an intentional threat. It's just a consequence of the technology that I wound up being at the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's one thing about threat. The other thing is hostile intent. We're not fear mongering here. First of all, we're not even sure if it is a threat. We're trying to determine, is it or not? And anybody who says, well, we already know, and you should be wasting your time on that. No, you don't know. Okay, you think you know, and you want to sit here and tell people that you, in your mind, that this isn't a threat. But you know what? You can't gamble with my life. I'm not going to allow you. You don't have the right to do that. If you want to go ahead and gamble with your life, then God bless you. Go ahead and do it. But don't gamble with mine. Don't gamble with my families. Don't gamble with my friends. Let them make a determination whether or not they think something like this could be a threat to them. And a threat could be anything. It could be a threat to your philosophical belief systems. It can be an environmental threat. It can be all sorts of different threats. You know, we need to figure it out. Is there a potential threat here, which doesn't even come close to yet talking about hostile intent?
Of course.
You know? And I think people will say all the time, well, you know, we want to make sure this is not fear mongering. We're going to use this to go ahead and build, you know, more space-based weapons. That's utter nonsense. We're not there. We're not even there in the conversation.
Yep.
We're just finally trying to determine what the hell this thing is. So, you know, that's part of my frustration I deal with on a daily basis. So you automatically see the hat, right? You see U.S. Army or the intelligence officer, and these are people that when you look at their social media profile, you know, they support all these human rights and whatnot and non-stereotypes. And the first one to come out and say, "Oh, look, he's a military guy. You can never trust him." What?
That's crazy.
I mean, do you not see the contradiction in that perspective? You know, I first of all never said it's a threat. I said we're trying to determine if it's a threat.
Sure.
And by the way, if it's not a threat, then you got nothing to worry about.
Exactly.
Who cares? What do you care what I'm doing with to determine for me if it's a threat or not? You know, if you've already made that mental conclusion that it's not, then, you know, God bless you. But don't stop me from doing what I need to do, my own personal calculus, for me to make that determination myself.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I say to people. If something's incurring in our sensitive airspace over nuclear facilities and military sensitive areas, then, I mean, doesn't it just fall straight away under a national security threat until proven otherwise?
Look, our government spend millions and millions and millions of dollars, not just ours, all of ours, on protecting its national borders and its sovereignty. That is the job of the national security apparatus. That is what your taxpayer dollars pay for. If you don't think it's important, then tell your Congress people it's not important and don't pay your tax money for that. And, you know, we won't have a military national security apparatus. Okay, fine. But as long as we have a national security apparatus, that's its job. Don't get mad at the government for doing the job it's supposed to do.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Right. Let's move on to something that I don't think I've heard you talk about, really. So you recently appeared on an episode of Expedition X, I believe it was called, which focused on Catalina Island and the UAP sightings relating to the ocean. And at one point during the show, you took a water sample from an area just off the coast of the island where there'd been some strong magnetic readings. And I think the water sample turned out that it had higher than normal cesium isotope levels. Can you confirm this and maybe extrapolate on any significance to those findings?
Well, you know, it was my recommendation to do the water sampling test. Obviously, if UAPs or UFOs are also USOs or related to USOs, you know, one of the things we want to do is determine the effects on its environment and biology, right? So one of the easiest ways and cheapest ways to do that is just take a water test, right? Sure. Now, let's not forget here that you've got a lot of flow rate. You got a lot of water coming up and down the coast. You know, the water that you're sampling now may have been, you know, 100 miles away out into the deep ocean just 24 hours earlier. So you got to be careful. But if there is a persistent source that is let's say contaminating the local waters, you should be able to test for that. Now, the fact that you have more cesium is interesting, but there are things that mankind does that will create that cesium trail, especially chemical type waste. And it turns out that there are some of these. There was a recent article done that over the course of 70 plus years, there's been a lot of contamination in that water because there's been a lot of waste, and it's not just chemical waste, but could even potentially be radioactive waste. Right. Could that be the reason why there's more cesium? We don't know, but I will tell you that we do have some samples. Very interesting. And by the way, Expedition X didn't know this. I did not share this information with them. So I wanted to see for myself, and I didn't want to do anything to artificially prejudice the analysis here. Sure. But we do have some samples, allegedly, of some pretty exotic material that has interesting high levels of cesium. with some
Wow.
interesting isotopic ratios. So that is true. And so the question is this potentially related, or is it not? Is it just, hey, we got a lot of industrial waste off the coast of Los Angeles, and that's a consequence of that. So we don't know. It's certainly intriguing, but we don't have enough data yet to have any real conclusion.
But is that still an area of focus that is ongoing, like you say, that it could have some really valuable data?
Sure, all the way down the Guadalupe Island.
Right.
So there definitely, if you talk not just to military personnel, but you talk to the local fishermen who are in their own right trained observers. They've been spending generations on those waters. They know what's natural and what's not natural. They've seen it all from bioluminescence to weather phenomenon and ball lightning. And what they're reporting is very, very similar to what the military eyewitnesses are reporting. There's something there. It is one of the hot spots. Now, the question is it a hot spot because there's actually more activity, or is it a hot spot because we happen to have more eyes, if you will, in the area, both on the water and looking in the skies? We have military maneuvers going on and exercises. We have sophisticated radar data and equipment going on. You've got two huge metropolitan areas between San Diego and Tijuana, and also, of course, Los Angeles, all very, very centrally focused. We don't know yet, but there does appear to be a high prevalence of UAP activity in that area.
Great, thank you so much. I found that really interesting. And just sticking with that series, there was a video caught from the cliffside. I think it was in the first episode. Which, have you seen that clip? It was caught from the cliffside, and it showed a UAP performing pretty strange maneuvers. I mean, a lot of people say that it's just the TV show making it up for TV's purposes, for entertainment. Can you clarify anything about that at all?
Well, I'll tell you my impression, and I don't know the hosts very well, but my impression that both Josh Gates and his programming and his hosts are always trying to portray an accurate picture.
Right.
When I was there, I didn't notice them doctoring anything. In fact, one of them is a biologist, a scientist, and he's when you talk to him, he'll tell you, hey, look, I'm a scientist. I prefer in following the scientific method. I don't think they are prone to hoaxing anything. That was not my impression. They seem very sincere in their approach. It's hard with a TV show because TV has to be not only factual, but in order for TV to be successful, it has to be entertaining.
Of course.
And this has always been my frustration because I'm not an entertainer. I'm not an actor. With me is what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly talented in anything. So I've told people before I'm about as attractive as a cement truck. So I don't make very good TV. But I do understand that, if order for TV to be successful, you have to have eyeballs on the set. And that's how they get their, whether they get subscription or they get through advertisement.
Yeah.
So you have to have people tuning in each week. And so there is a part of that element in most TV shows where there is the way that they edit it ensures that the audience will come back and see more episodes.
Of course.
But it's not disingenuous. It's not artificial drama. They're not making something up. What they're simply doing is they just don't tell you the reveal until the next episode. And that's how they keep people coming back, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's a proven technique to keep people interested. And that's the same thing even with media today. When you look at some of the major mainstream media, they'll tell you this. I'll share. When I was a young intelligence officer, I won't say which outlet, but we had some people, the media, come in, and they said to us, "Hey, look, we want to let you guys know something. We're a business. I know we come across as fair and impartial, and we're the media, we're news." But we are a business because we don't get paid. We can't pay the salaries of our anchors and our camera operators and everything else unless we have advertisers. And the only way we're going to get money for advertising is if people watch. So, we are a business, make no mistake, like any other business, and we have to be financially successful and viable. And that to me really was kind of that aha moment because I never really realized that as a young person. I thought that, there was this sense of duty to just report the news and, whether you watched it or not, it was always going to be, this fair and impartial broadcast. And it turns out that's not the case. They have to be honest. They can't lie.
Yeah.
But there's an art form to telling the news that gets people to tune in, day after day after day. And I think it's important, very much like this podcast here, right? You and me having this conversation. We're not artificially, making anything up. This topic is dramatic enough as it is. But there's a certain, in order to be viable, you need people to tune in. And so how do you get people to tune in? Well, you put people up that have an interesting story to tell, or perhaps have been involved in something historical or whatever. And the show with Josh Gates and Expedition X for me was a wonderful experience. Both myself and Sean Cahill had a chance to be on it. I really like their approach, and I really like the fact that they're using young people.
Yeah.
Because I've told people before, and I know some people get mad at me for saying this, but look, my generation has done enough to screw things up. I think this topic, as we move forward, belongs to the next generation. And if we're going to get to the bottom of this, it's going to be the next generation doing it. It's not going to be some old fart like me. It's going to be, someone picking up the baton and moving forward. And that's where the future lies. And if you don't recognize it, then you're going to miss the boat, and you're not doing this topic any good. So we have to be inclusive, and having this conversation and letting the next generation be part of that conversation is immensely important. This is one of the reasons why I just did the shout out. This is the reason why I talk about Christina over at the debrief, and some of these young people that are coming in, Chrissy as well, because they're the ones that are going to, in 30, 40 years, they're the ones that are going to be sitting here having this conversation with the world. And frankly, hopefully they're a hell of a lot smarter than we are on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I couldn't agree more. They're doing some fantastic work. Both of the females I just mentioned, they're absolutely incredible.
And so that's why I did. I know a long-winded story, but Expedition X.
No,
that's why I did
you.
It, because I thought it was young folks trying to have an honest conversation about something. They invited myself and Sean to come out there and have a conversation. And you and your your listeners probably know that I try never to pass up an opportunity to have this conversation with anybody. I don't care if it's for TV, radio, podcast. I don't care if you've got one follower or you got 10 million followers. The conversation is worth having.
That's great. Thank you so much. And it's appreciated. And we can never get enough of hearing what you've got to say. This leads me on to a recent interview you did with our mutual friend, a very good friend, Mr. Max Moskowitz. You described to Max in with some drawings about the different shapes of the UAP and how they could be related. The discs moving into a triangle, possibly into a cigar. It was a beautiful way of explaining it. But going a little bit further on that kind of area, is it possible that these crafts can cause the witnesses to perceive the shape? So to one person it might look like something, but to another it might look like something else, and it's actually acting on the person's visions or conscious levels, possibly.
Well, we see this all the time, don't we, in nature? This is not anything that's super sophisticated technologically speaking. We see camouflage and mimicry and cloaking in nature all the time, whether it's an octopus trying to change its colors or a cuttlefish trying to use bioluminescence to warn a potential predator, or it's a particular gecko sitting on a tree limb that now all of a sudden assumes the same color and texture around it. There's mimicry that we see in nature all the time between a coral snake, which is very, very, very venomous, and a king snake, which is not venomous at all, but the color differentiations on patterns are very similar. So is it possible that this is also being used from a technical perspective? Well, we're doing it now. We do it with our B-2 bomber. We use special coatings and special shapes and geometry to hide the fact that we have an aircraft in enemy territory. Now I think what you're asking me, is it possible that these craft somehow are tapping into each individual's own psyche and being able to pull something out and says, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look like this, or I'm going to look like that. I don't know that. There's a lot of people that speculate that. I haven't seen any information that substantiates that, but it doesn't mean that's not the case. I simply haven't seen that myself. But low observability is one of the observables. It's the fact that it's hard to see with your naked eye. It's hard to see electro-optically. It's very hard to see on radar. Again, people are going to, hear what I have to say, they're going to say, "Oh, there goes Lou, dodging another question." I'm not dodging a question. I'm just trying to use common sense. I'm trying to take, when someone asks me a question, say, "Look, it's not that far out there. You can look right now here on our own planet and see examples of this biologically occurring all the time."
Yeah.
And we do it as a species ourselves.
Indeed.
So is it possible that something that is super technologically advanced could be doing that? Sure, it's possible. I don't have any data to necessarily back that up right now, but it doesn't mean in 5 years we don't come to this aha moment, this epiphany, this revelation that's exactly what's happening. We just don't have enough data yet to make that type of conclusion.
Sure,
but it doesn't mean that it's not possible.
Yeah, and a lot of the examples you just gave are biological things from our world. Is there any research being done on the possibility of these objects having a biological side to them, even the actual craft themselves? Has that been looked into much at all? Are you aware of?
Well, you know what? I'm gonna answer your question with another question.
Okay.
What's your definition of biology? I come from a background of biology, microbiology, immunology, and parasitology. Study of parasites, not parapsychology, parasitology. Right. And every time we think we have a definition of what a life form is, Mother Nature throws us a curveball. For a long time we thought photosynthesis was the basis of all life on this planet. Turns out it's not. We have things called chemosynthesis, right? And extremophiles that live at the bottom of the ocean, where they gain their nutrition and energy through chemical processes, not photoelectric. Yeah. Photoelectric processes, right? And then we thought, well, okay, all living things must have DNA. Turns out, well, okay, now some virologists are suggesting that viruses, they do a lot of things that living things do. They replicate and they defend themselves, and but they don't have DNA at all. They have RNA, and yet they seem very much alive. So we have to understand that when we say, is there anything biological behind these things? It's I think we need to be very clear, just like what disclosure means. We need to know, what does it mean, first of all, when you say biological? Because a kid flying a kite, the kite isn't a biological organism, but the kid flying it and controlling it is a biological organism, right?
Sure.
And then you have that kite interacting potentially with birds or insects that are in the atmosphere, I guess my point being is that anything's possible. We need more data.
Sure.
And I think, these are certainly questions that we should be asking ourselves from an academic and a scientific perspective, and let's let the data speak for itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just sticking with the interview you did with Max, you teased us with a little quote saying there is an elegant way to explain why we see what we see from the outside when observing these phenomena, to which you said that you would show him another time. Is that something you'd be able to discuss with us right now?
Unfortunately, not quite yet. We are those models are being part of this discussion is effective communication. And the last thing you want to do is take an important topic like this, and if you cannot communicate concisely with your audience, then you have a chance of really messing things up. And so efforts are underway to provide a very elegant illustration that people can look at and say, that makes sense. And I don't want to let that out prematurely, because I think we can even do a better job of illustrating that, and hopefully in the very near future, an audience will be able to see that.
Excellent.
So that's
something to look forward to. Then, are you able to let us know who is doing that or looking into that?
It's a collective.
Okay.
It's a collective of a lot of folks that you'd probably recognize.
Excellent. So I won't try and push that point too much any further. Let's move on. Now, the UFO community and others as well have recently become aware of this new think tank, Skyfort, led by Sean Cahill and I think a few of his friends. And he mentioned it in a recent interview with James Ian Doley of Engaging the Phenomena, and mentioned that you're connected to it. And are you able to expand on that a bit and let us know what role you will be playing?
Yeah,
I think a lot of people are Yeah,
Sure.
sorry, go
I'm
on.
an advisor. People say, "Oh, this is TTSA 2.2.0." No, it's not. Skyfort hasn't asked anybody for money. It is a strategic think tank that is helping us navigate and advise through this very interesting topic. We've never really had a conversation like this before, and so being able to. I've mentioned this before. Pardon me. There are 5 pillars of emphasis, very much like an intelligence or a military campaign. You have to make sure all are coordinated and you don't get out in front of the headlights too far on one of them. The first one is legislative engagement, and that's engaging our elected officials, letting them know where to find the data and the seriousness of the topic.
Right.
Then it's executive level engagement, and that second pillar is engaging our department heads and secretary level leadership, letting them know where they can find the data, right? Internally to their own organizations, who are the experts within their organizations, they can leverage it, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
The third pillar of emphasis is our international engagement, and that's engaging our friends and allies in other countries and their governments and institutions and organizations to share information, get into a formal information sharing relationship like we just did with Japan.
Yes.
And several other countries now that are happening. Yeah. The fourth pillar of engagement is media engagement, mainstream media, letting them know that it's okay to report on this topic, and despite the stigma and taboo historically associated with this topic, you should report on it because it is one that's important, and it is scientific, and it is academic. And then the last pillar of interest, if we will, or emphasis that we dedicate to is public engagement. Exactly what we're doing here right now,
right.
Letting the people know that whether you're around the dinner table or the water cooler, it's okay to have a conversation about this, because ultimately, and probably this is the most important pillar of all, because if the people say it's okay to have a conversation, then you're more likely to have your elected officials and mainstream media reporting on it, right?
Sure.
Again, because they feel it's okay to do so.
Absolutely.
And so it's very important. So what Skyfort does, back to your question, I eventually get back to it.
That's okay.
Is that they are helping us navigate these, and to make sure that we move together collectively as a process, all of these pillars, making sure that there are specific touch points within each of those pillars that you want to make sure you engage. And Skyfort has been extremely helpful. The connections that Sean Cahill has managed to amass with folks like Jesse and Jake are enormous. They all have experience like you do on social media and YouTube and delivering content, but they also have investigative backgrounds. They also have media backgrounds. They also have Hollywood backgrounds. They have the backgrounds necessary to orchestrate, if you will, or conduct the orchestra in a way where now you're making music instead of just little bits of sounds popping up within the orchestra. The French horns are playing their own tune while the violins are kind of screeching out something over there on that corner. And the guy on the timpani in the back is just, rocking out to AC/DC. It only works when everybody is playing together and in a coordinated manner. And that is what that's the elegance of Skyfort. It is a one-stop shop to help us recognize those strategic touch points and make sure that the right message is delivered. So people can make well-informed decisions.
Brilliant. I just wondered if there would be any actual research involved as well, looking at cases as well, or
there will be, but again, think of Skyfort as a big umbrella, right? And under that big umbrella, you're going to have several little umbrellas with verticals of different level, different interests that they're going to be engaged in. Yeah. That's why you see in there it's an incubator. I'm not owner of it. I don't have any financial interest in it. Yeah. But they have been exceedingly helpful, helping us navigate this landscape, both for Chris Mellon and myself. They know what the hell is going on. And when you are in a military campaign, you want good advisors. That's what you want on your team. Of course, people out there, the haters, are going to speculate, this is 2.0 TTSA. These guys just it's another money plug, or Lue owns no, I have no financial interest in this. I'm not, all I am is an advisor. I'm not on the board of directors. I don't have any voting privileges. I'm not getting any money out of this. In fact, I suspect if you were to talk to Skyfort, they're probably losing a lot of money because they're donating most of their time to support this activity. They're not making a penny right now for this. So, anybody out there who's listening in your audience that, wants to throw arrows, they probably need to do a little bit more research, before they start making, unqualified conclusions like that.
No, that's great. Thank you for talking about it. I think a lot of people were, when they first heard the name, I think it was Tucker Carlson, something that produced a document on one of his things.
Yeah,
And it,
I was not ready for that. I was kind of like, wow, okay.
yeah, I think
So,
everybody eyes widened, like what is Skyfort? So no, thank you for clarifying your involvement and a bit more about what they intend to do in the future. That's great. Moving on, this is something that I've only recently heard about. Back in 2019, Rich Hoffman of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, he briefly mentioned two cases involving the Navy that we'd not really heard about before. One, the USS Boxer in 1998. The other, the USS Bainbridge in 2017. I like the little smile there because it sounds like you're aware of them. And that's what I was going to ask. Are you aware of these cases? And can you give us any details about them?
I am aware of them. I cannot discuss them right now.
Okay.
I think there are efforts underway right now to figure that out. But look, I'll give you another heads up here. It ain't just the Bainbridge. It ain't just the kid and the Omaha. It ain't just what people know about the Boxer. There's some pretty pretty interesting encounters that are happening as of like last week.
And do these all involve data, video, photos, everything across the spectrum of what we need to analyze these cases as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm not going to discuss them right now because that's really under the purview of the U.S. government. I'm not going to tell you AORs. I'm not going to tell you anything else right now until maybe someone else decides to have the conversation.
I understand.
But this is occurring regular and routinely. This is not just the Nimitz and the Roosevelt. This is happening all the time.
And are these coming in through the official channels that the Navy brought into effect in 2020, where they kind of made it seem okay for the personnel to report these things? Have we seen an influx since that happened?
Yeah, they're reporting it. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. The Snoopy teams are engaged. It's working. Can it work better? Sure. I mean, everything can work better, right?
Of course.
But
yeah.
It's finally, that process has been established and it is working. So I'm very pleased by that. That was one of the greatest tasks, if you will, and goals that I had when I first left, that there'd be some sort of official reporting mechanism that would be established. And that's well underway.
That's great. That's really good to hear that it's working, and it's only really been about a year. So that is a big positive step in the right direction. The only reason I asked that question about the Bainbridge and the Boxer is because I rewatched the lecture that Rich Hoffman did, and I thought, well, if he's mentioning them by name and year, then maybe it's fallen out of some classified area into a gray area. I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, and look, Rich is great. I mean, his organization is they've done a lot they haven't received credit for behind the scenes, but they have definitely helped Congress make informed decisions. These folks are mostly former or current military and intelligence personnel, scientists working on this topic, and it's a great organization. I love what Rich has done with the SCU. I think it's something that we've needed for a very long time. And what will be wonderful is when the SCU can enter into some sort of work relationship with the U.S. government. I think that's almost at this point probably an inevitability, just because of the high concentration of expertise, scientific expertise that they have.
That's great. I think this is actually probably a good time to tell everybody here that's going to see this that I have just confirmed an interview with Rich Hoffman, which I will be conducting on Wednesday, the 7th of July. I will put out all the details across all my social media platforms, but that is an organization that I am a huge fan of. I've read a lot of their papers and listened to a lot of their speeches and lectures and talks. So I think that scientific angle is a very important in this day and age. So,
yep, agreed.
Right, let's move on. Right, I'm going to go into a few. I don't know how to describe these questions, but
I can tell your hesitation. You're mulling in your head. What?
Yeah, I mean, I've got the list. I never really know whether to just read it in the list order or just throw a few curveballs in. But I'm going to go and ask: are you aware of any attempts to bait these objects, to draw them in? And I don't mean necessarily through a consciousness CE5 thing. I mean like more of a military aspect.
Yes.
Okay. Any I don't suppose you're able to talk about that, or no? Okay, no, moving on. It's been said that Chris Mellon was denied access to looking into the Department of Energy. I don't know much more details on that, but my question is, did ATIP ever work closely with the Department of Energy when they were looking into cases? Were they given access?
We were focused primarily on DoD equities,
Sure.
but there were times where you have, without going into detail here, there are times where you have joint Department of Energy and Department of Defense equities at certain facilities. Okay, and I'll leave it at that. And in those circumstances, we were made aware through other reporting mechanisms of interesting incidents involving some of those facilities.
Cool. That's great. Thank you so much. I'm just going to keep moving through these. Some of these are really short questions. And so since a lot of these cases have been happening over decades now surrounding nuclear facilities and really sensitive weapons areas, has there been anything put in place to try and deter them from those areas or to stop them messing with these facilities and weapons?
That would be a question you would have to bring up with the equity holders, Department of Defense and Department of Energy. I certainly don't want to speak to whatever countermeasures may be in place.
Okay.
I'll have to politely defer to them.
No, that's fine. No problem at all. Okay. Jim Semivan. Now, I think we've all been aware of Jim for a few years now, but not heard so much recently. He recently made a statement saying that his view on this UAPTF report is that it will lead to a more permanent command group or task force after that. I mean, I think that is what we all want. It almost sounded like he knew something. Are you aware of something like that, or is it?
Well, I mean, Jim hears information from his various sources. Right. I'm not going to speculate where Jim may have heard that. I've made it no secret that, I support, and so does Chris, an enduring capability. Fill in the blanks.
Sure. Okay. Now, I think a lot of people are still unclear about what happened with TTSA and how it ended. And there's a lot of rumors and speculation flying around. Are you able to just give us a brief breakdown of what happened, why it separated, and why you left, and are you still talking and communicating? I think it just needs to be laid out there once and for all.
Yeah, sure. So it wasn't just me who left TTSA. It was Chris Mellon, and it was Hal Pudoff, and it was also Steve Justice. Hal was a founding member. He was on the board of directors. It was decided that by folks inside TTSA, they wanted to pursue the entertainment angle. And that really doesn't leave a whole lot of work for guys like Chris and I and Steve Justice, who, we're not entertainers.
Sure.
We're just not. And, people see on the street as, oh, you got that TV show, but I'm not an actor. I'm a former intel officer. And so our skill sets would have been better used probably in a different capacity than just, entertainment. Entertainment's important, but remember, that's how you, in some cases, you engage the fifth pillar, which is public engagement. Yeah. But that's not our skill set. That's not where we do best. Tom is a great guy. He's exceedingly talented as an entertainer. Yeah. He's very creative, but that's not our skill set. Sure. And so when the decision was made to pursue entertainment, it was prudent for those of us who are not entertainers to continue to pursue this effort the best that we know how, and that is via vis-a-vis government interaction, media engagement, more strategic level dialogue. Than necessarily, books or movies or stuff like that.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. I mean, I think it was important because I just get asked it all the time, and I don't like to speculate and things like that. I think what really interested me with the work going on at that time was the Adam project, looking into the metamaterials. I mean, I would normally assume that Hal Puthoff just continued with that work. Can you confirm that at all? Are you aware of it? I mean, I'd love to ask the man himself.
Well, I mean, certainly that's very important. I don't know what TTSA is doing right now involving the atom. I know that we're working on that pretty significantly. But atom is
when you
obviously.
Say we, sorry, can I just, when you say we, who's we?
Some of my colleagues and associates.
Okay.
We are pursuing that. Of course, Atom is a name given by TTSA. That's their trademark.
Yeah.
Let me say this with TTSA. Look, they have an obligation to their investors to do a return on investment. And one of the best ways to do that, if you are an entertainer, is to continue entertaining.
Yeah.
And so, doing movies and fiction books and things like that is a way to get revenue and make sure that you fulfill your promise to the investors. Okay.
Right.
And I don't disagree with that. I mean, your first obligation is to your investors, making sure that you. So, it's hard. What we're doing, what Chris and I are doing, is very hard to monetize. In fact, it costs a lot of personal resources to do what we're doing.
Sure.
We don't have banks, giving us money hand over fist to do what we're doing. A lot of this is self-financed. It can be a bit of a burden. And there certainly you're not going to have any return on investment for your investors, doing it, what we're doing. So
brilliant. That's great. I'm going to move on to Dr. Eric Davis, who I'm a big fan of.
Me too.
A very big fan. And he's claimed a few times that the ATIP never ended in 2012. It just simply changed managerial roles and switched around a few things and continues to this day. Is that what you're talking about when you're talking about me and my colleagues?
Well, first of all, Eric Davis is a national treasure, and I mean that
absolutely.
Sincerely. If you ever have a chance to meet him, he is one of the original graybeards. He has done more for it. And by the way, he's super humble. So if you ask him, he'll say, "Oh, well, I did some things." I've read the reports. I know exactly what he's done for his country, and one day they'll write a book about him. He really is the man behind the green curtain to some degree. He's an incredible human being, an incredible patriot. As far as working with Eric, I mean, we talk all the time, right? Good. I mean, it's not every day you get a chance to talk to a nuclear physicist, right? Who's worked on beamed energy propulsion and, was the author on some of these DIRDs. He's a living legend. Yeah. Of course we still talk and we still collaborate, and when opportunities arise for us to all work together on a project, we do that. And if it comes out maybe in the next year or so that people find out, hey, there's another project that these guys are working on behind the scenes, that shouldn't be a surprise.
Great. I look forward to it. Absolutely. Thank you. I'm just going to move on now to a few of my follower questions. So, these are from them, not from me.
Vinnie, by the way, let me interject. I want to propose something. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Twitter. I'm always talking Twitter. But is there a way where we can change the term or the tag up there followers into colleagues? Because I just feel so damn guilty every time someone says, "Oh, I've got umpteen number of followers." I on this topic, I don't think anybody's following anybody. I think we're all leading the charge together. And I wish there was a way we could change that stupid tag that says followers or following into something like, I don't know, some sort of collective. Hey, you're now part of the fight, right? You're now part of the
I agree 100%. I will start using my colleagues instead of followers. I think they'll love that. And I am classed as disclosure team, and everyone asks about me and my team, and it's actually just me. And I say that my colleagues, followers, are the rest of the team. We are one collective together because we're all after the same thing. And I always say that.
Exactly. So I love that you say, disclosure team. It's right. We are a team. Yeah. We are a very formidable team when we stand shoulder to shoulder.
Indeed.
we are only here because we're working together. We're not here because I got 45,000 followers.
No.
We're here because all of us together have decided to stand together and do our best to have this conversation together collectively, right?
Absolutely.
And all opinions matter. All opinions count, even the ones that aren't necessarily very nice sometimes.
Yeah.
I just say that because I wish there was a way we could petition Twitter and say, look, is there any way we could change that from followers to bandmates or whatever?
I'm going to take that on board. I'm going to use that, colleagues instead of followers, going forward. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. So my colleague questions.
There you go.
This is from Kevin O'Malley. During your employment at the Pentagon, did you become aware of other legacy special access programs which had been studying UAPs for decades?
Yeah, so great question, Kevin. The answer is yes, but it was more from the Project Blue Book perspective. It wasn't until I got out of the ATIP in 2017 that I was on the Hill that I was introduced to somebody who was running a ATIP-like program in the 80s for the Navy, and I was stunned. I after all these years, I wound up leaving that meeting scratching my head, saying, it only took a decade to find out. I mean,
wow.
It could have been pretty helpful.
That's interesting. Definitely could have been helpful. So, Lou, you showed some slides once in I think, well, this is the question, so I don't know if it's correct, but you apparently showed some slides in an SCU briefing on the nature of UAPs, which showed some foreign nations' flags, specifically Danish and Swedish. Are you aware of them having any sort of military UAP studies groups ongoing or anything like that? And that's from Christian Thompson.
Answer is yes. They had some programs established when I was in ATIP. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I don't want to speak on behalf of another country, where they were looking into UAPs. Shouldn't be any surprise.
No, absolutely. I think that's great that they did. And you said they did rather than they have. Is that something that you think might have ended, or?
Well, I want to be very careful. I don't want to speak on behalf of countries' current capabilities and interests. That I'd rather let the countries speak for themselves. Especially if I have to go back over there and work with them. I don't want to be one of those guys that has made life complicated for them unnecessarily. So out of respect for them, I'd rather let them answer that question as it relates to present day.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you. This is from my good friend, Mr. Strafe Wilson. Did you ever meet Richard Doty in a professional capacity during your time with ATIP?
I've never met Mr. Doty ever, and not even even in my current capacity. I'm aware of the individual's reputation, whether good or bad, but I've never had an opportunity to speak with him or meet with him.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Great question. Because I mean, you both worked under similar intelligence agencies. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. What are your thoughts on the various videos over the years supposedly showing real footage of extraterrestrial beings, such as the Skinny Bob video?
We have to validate and verify that before I could speculate on it. I'm not a video expert. We need that's why in ATIP we employed experts. I might be a lot of things, but a video expert I am not. And I'm willing to recognize my limitations. Unlike some other folks who have recently informed the media that they're experts in XYZ when they're really not.
Yeah.
I'm not a video expert. And so any type of video, whether it's of potentially extraterrestrial life or anything else, I would need an expert or two or three, like we did on our show with Unidentified, to sit there and look at these objects, or in this case, a biological organism, if that indeed is the case. I don't know. I don't have enough information to speculate one way or the other.
Great. No, that's fine. Thank you. Just keeping with the show Unidentified. In the program, the Italians had a frequency that the UAPs used to shoot down a helicopter. Can Can you tell us more about that at all? Because I think you went over there, didn't you?
Yeah. Look, here people will look at this and say, "Oh, the Italy thing was some guy who set fires and it was an arsonist." Look, we saw the real file. We saw the real documents and investigation, and that's simply not true. People say, "Oh, that's a hoax." No, it's not. Okay, wow. You weren't there in the meetings. I'm going to say you, but we were there. And what they explained was very interesting. First of all, you had these old houses on the seashore that were burning up. But here's what's so interesting. They still had the original copper wiring running through the walls for electricity and whatnot. Well,
right.
They were able to determine by the distance between the points of heat in the copper cable to determine what the frequency that was being, some sort of electromagnetic frequency that was being used. Wow. And interestingly enough, they thought that this was originally a Russian sub. They thought this was some sort of directed energy testing being done by a Russian sub off the coast, because these things kept happening, kept saying the same. And from that, they calculated the electromagnetic frequency of what this directed energy was. Furthermore, they actually evacuated a village and built this huge, what looked like a Faraday cage, according to Italian authorities, to try to really begin to start intercepting these frequencies and figuring it out. And it turns out that the helicopter that they were using, which was an undercover helicopter, there's pictures of these things, of these objects from different perspectives following the helicopter. And that when the helicopter did an emergency landing, it had one of its rotors blown out from the inside out, and you can actually see it blown out like that. And these incidents continued to some degree after supposedly the perpetrator of these house fires was arrested. So it's simply not true what some people have told us, at least what from our understanding of the investigation, which we were privy to. We actually saw the documentation and the briefing slides. It was very compelling. And by the way, we were briefed by their Joint Chiefs of Staff and the former commander of their Navy SEALs, who were leading this investigation. There's pictures from different perspectives from different people of the same object maneuvering like this all through the sky. And there's actually photographs, and you can see it moving with this instantaneous acceleration and hypersonic velocity. So, that's the Italian, if you will, incident that we were made privy to.
I mean, I've seen the program a few times. I can't remember. Was that footage actually in the show, or is it publicly available?
The problem is that I don't know. I've never seen it publicly available. I tell you from my perspective, what's so frustrating when you do a TV shows, we're filming on 100-to-1 ratio, meaning for every 1 minute you see on camera, you have 100 minutes of film that you can't use because there's simply not enough time.
Right.
So there's editorial decisions made by the editors, by these networks, to decide what's going to go in the show and what's not. And unfortunately, so much is left on the cutting room floor. It's such a shame, because when you see that beat, if you will, on the Italian investigation, you haven't seen the rest of what's going on, which for me was so compelling. It's like, oh my God, of all the stuff you're going to cut out, why did you cut that out? Right. And you say, well, we just simply didn't have enough time, So it goes back to, advertisers and having to make a business out of something.
Yeah, that's frustrating. I can imagine. But that's given me an angle or a direction to do some research into. So thank you. And I won't keep you too much longer. I know you've probably got a busy day ahead of you and that. But I'll finish on the Jeremy Corbell photos, videos, and data, because there are two views on that when I see it with my colleagues. Mixed reactions. The people think it's just blurry photos and they just want to see 4K high resolution videos and photos. But I always say, look, we get a lot of backup data with FLIR videos and that. What are your views on that thing about people just wanting to see a 4K photo and not appreciating these military videos?
Well, there are high definition photos that exist. I'm not at liberty to discuss them. I'm not at liberty to talk about them if they're government sourced, photos or videos. But again, let me go, and this is going to be frustrating. I know part of your audience is going to hate me for this, but our job is not there to satisfy the idle curiosity of people. Our job is to get our elected officials engaged on this so they can make well-informed decisions, so we can finally figure this out collectively. And that's exactly what we're doing, what's happening. Yeah. So, our mission accomplishment is making sure that we have an enduring capability so one day you can get those 4K photos. But this is not, we're not here to satisfy the idle curiosity. People say, that's enough, Lou. You need to get rid of your non-disclosure agreement with the government. The hell with everything. And you know what? You should go to jail for us. Well, that sounds nice, but you don't have a family to feed,
Exactly.
So, it's easy for you to say, but you could always, be in my shoes, homie, for a minute and try what it's like. It ain't easy.
No.
It's a lot of work. And, you're risking a lot by doing that. And so,
Sure.
I've never been one to leak information. People say, information was leaked. I never leaked information.
No.
I know people have, but I don't recommend it if you have a security clearance. I'm held to a different standard than you are, because to me, it's guilty knowledge. If I know something's classified and I talk about it, I go to jail. You are a civilian. You don't have a security clearance. If you talk about something and didn't know it was classified, there's nothing going to happen to you. Nothing at all. Yeah. You get to live your life every day just like you normally do. Guys like me, we go to jail for 20 years, maybe longer.
I think people forget that as well, and they just expect you to sacrifice your life for the masses. And I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Well, and honestly, if we had done it that way 3 years ago, I'm not sure we'd be this far down the road.
Yeah,
I think I would just be a blip on the radar, and some prisoner number, and we would not be where we are today. Again, we have to be very deliberate how we do this. I'm not trying to be destructive. I'm trying to be constructive.
Of course.
That's why this conversation is happening the way it is. I'm not trying to tear anything down. I'm trying to fix it.
No, of course. I'm just going to ask you one final question, and it probably is a little bit cheeky, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We were just talking about the 4K photos. There is this one photo that everybody's been talking about for quite some time now, reportedly showing a black triangle that's come out of the ocean. Have you seen that photo?
I can't discuss that.
Okay, no worries. I thought I'd ask.
Great question.
I understand. Well, Lou, I can just not thank you enough for being here and letting me ask you these questions.
Vinnie, my sincere pleasure. I hope I didn't bore you or your audience too much.
Not at all.
I sometimes I tend to wear my mind on my sleeve. Maybe sometimes I'm a little bit too candid. So if I've offended anybody, it's certainly not my intent.
You've certainly not offended me.
Okay. Well, I try to be cognizant of that. Try to be aware of that. I know not everybody necessarily appreciates, a military person or, someone who wears their patriotism on their sleeve. I do. This country, my family coming as my father's side, all immigrants and being in exile now from Cuba, this country's been fantastic for us. And, I am proud. I'm proud of the people I had a chance to work with and for, and the jobs I had a chance to do. And I hope that doesn't come across as militant, because as much as I love our military, I'm not necessarily a militant guy.
No, of course, it doesn't come across that way.
I much prefer a handshake than a machine gun.
No, absolutely. And I can't thank you enough. And I think even after today, this interview, and even after the report comes out, I think there's still going to be a million questions that people are going to want to ask you. So I'd love to invite you back on in the future, and the door is always open for you here. We love you, and we want to thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Anytime, and thank you for what you're doing. This is so important. This is not lip service. I mean, I am telling you, for a matter of fact, we would not be having this conversation today if it wasn't folks for like you and your audience who are engaging on this topic. You've really made a difference. There's a groundswell occurring. There's a grassroots movement, and our governments are paying attention to it. Even now in the UK, they're beginning to start to warm up to the idea that, hey, maybe we should start looking at this again and start talking to our citizens. It's working. It's actually happening. So huge congratulations and a big thanks to you all as well for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say, and it's my pleasure. So, guys, thank you everybody that's been here live with us, and for everybody that may come and watch us in the future. Thank you so much. Like I said, I'm new to this. I'm a bit nervous. I may get better over time, but
you could have fooled me. You don't seem nervous a bit. You seem
I hit it well.
Smooth, steady.
Thank you. Right. Well, yeah, I'm going to end this broadcast here, guys. So, what I will say is go and join Mr. Max Moskowitz over on his YouTube channel. He's interviewing Ryan Sprague. So that's where I'm going to go. I'll see you all there. Thanks. See you later.
Take care, everybody.